for us to create a business, right? So let's accept the fact that you as chiropractors are business people. You have to put on the hat of a business person, and that's a very different hat than being a caregiver, being a provider. So putting on your business hat means to create a business that runs very, very well, very efficiently without you being there. So the team is so well trained and there are systems in place that that business can run very, very efficiently. And you're not the one, driving the dog sled all the time, for lack of a better comparison. You're not pushing them all the time. You're leading them, but they end up leading themselves or leading each other. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So this talk is basically entitled, I titled it, How to Create a Team That Pays, How to Create a Team That Makes You Money. So the first thing to realize is that your team is your biggest sales asset. Your front desk staff is your sales team. You look at any successful company, they have a sales division. They probably have sales managers, they have sales lead teams, they have sales people. And typically those people get paid on bringing revenue into the business. That's their main goal. So they get compensated on commission or they get a percentage or whatever that is. Okay. So every successful company has a sales team. Your sales team is your front desk staff. They're the first interaction with all of your patients. So let's treat them like that. And we have to make sure that they understand the term sales is not a bad word. People look at the term sales and think, ooh, they get cringe, they get all upset. But let's define it as when you are good at sales, your biggest skill is helping people realize, persuading them to make a decision that helps them get the goal that they want for them, not for you. Cheesy salespeople try to sell things that people don't need. That's the used car salesman that's trying to sell a lemon to make a commission from somebody. But a good salesperson recognizes the problem, and this is something to have the conversation with your staff. A good salesperson recognizes the problem that that customer, that patient has, and gets them to make a decision to do something to help them achieve the goal to solve that problem. And if your team is good at solving other people's problems, you build a massive practice. So having somebody with those skills is great. So when you're hiring people, here's the thing. When you're hiring people, and I always said this for years, and I recognize this very young in my career, we always hired based on the energy that that person brought to the room. So I would much rather hire somebody with just a vibrant energy about them before any type of skill that they had. So that's why I've put here energy and vibration come well before the admin geek. If you have a front desk person who buries their head, he or her buries their head in front of their computer and on their keyboard, and all they're doing is typing or answering the phone with no energy and no vibration, and you feel it. You know somebody that's got that good energy. They bring it into the room. That's the type of person you want. So if you have that person that's just buried on their keyboard or just answering the phone and not bringing energy, they're not suited for that front desk position. The question, I've gone over this many times with you guys, is that this is something that I really, really insist that all of our team know is they need to be able to have an elevator speech. What is chiropractic? Many of you don't even have that. So you need to be able to go to your family, go to your friends, go to somebody that you just meet, that you introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm a chiropractor. And they say, oh, what's a chiropractor? Have your 30-second elevator speech that is so articulate, so well rehearsed, and comes out with such energy and authority that defines you and what you do, what you believe. It's based on your philosophy, based on what you do. And then the next thing is your team should be able to say, what makes your office unique? And if your team can't articulately say what makes you different, why, if they're talking to a patient on the phone and that patient's let's say they come from an ad, and there's 30 other chiropractors within a 10-mile radius in your community that are all running ads, and that patient basically is saying, okay, well, why should I come to you? That front desk person, that person on the phone, has to be able to explain to that person why your office is the right choice for them. So again, we went over a mission statement at that seminar we had recently, and many of you don't even have that yet. You don't have it up on the wall. You haven't clearly defined that. So your staff should know your mission statement forwards and backwards, and they should be able to say what makes your office unique. And then here's some sale training is that, you want to encourage and give your team the authority to become the master of persuasion. And there's a difference between persuasion and convincing. Convincing is typically convincing somebody to do something for your purposes, whereas persuasion is persuading somebody to do something for their benefit. That's the difference. So here's some words, and I trained with the team on this. Is we were very intentional with the wording that we used. So words that you want to avoid or phrases you want to avoid is I disagree, if you want to, or when am I going to see you again? It gives the authority away. We have to determine, we have to be so good at our systems and know exactly what we're delivering so that our team takes control and takes authority so that they make the determination of when the appointments are. When does the doctor want to see you again? Not when am I going to see you again? So don't undermine the authority. And the last thing here on this page is team is your most important patient. So if you have a care plan in place, you have a quote unquote sales process, day one, day two, day three, a care plan, a re-exam. And this is something you're delivering to each of the patients that come in, but your team hasn't even gone through that. Your team has never had a thorough exam. Your team maybe has never had an x-ray, or maybe your team has not had a neurological scan, your insight scan or their HRV measured or whatever that is. If that is the truth, and you can actually say, okay, we have somebody at the front desk, they've never had a scan, they have never had an x-ray. Like, take a look in the mirror, you guys. That is so vital. Make sure your team has experienced everything that you deliver. Make sure your team is getting adjusted regularly. Make sure their family is in and getting adjusted regularly. If you want people to refer their children, refer their spouses in, does your team have their spouse in, at least to have had their exam, or does your team have their kids in and under care? These are all things you really have to take a look at and say, is this something that I have put in place? And if it isn't, do it today. Don't wait on it. Have the conversation with your team and say, you are my most important patient. If you can't articulately say what we're doing here in our office, who the heck can? How do I expect a patient to refer if our team hasn't experienced it so they can refer? All right. So team training strategy. So of course, you guys know, and we don't have to talk about this, but daily pre-shift huddles. Huddles are so important, and your weekly staff meetings and weekly trainings are really important to have in place. And they should be booked with solid yellow lines. Nothing interrupts them. It's not like, oh, we can't do our training today because something came up. Nothing interrupts them. The phone gets turned off, the door gets locked. Nothing interrupts that time. We review our mission statement during our regular staff meeting. What does that mean? Do we have to revise it? Are we all on board with our mission statement? Does everybody truly own that mission statement? We take a look at our daily schedule in every huddle. Obviously, look at who's coming in. Are there any special appointments? We talk about affirmations. We talk about our goals for the week, our goals for the month, and we end with a cheer quarter prayer. Okay. We talk about special appointments during that time, whatever that might be. The weekly meetings, we're going to talk about, and we always had a weekly staff meeting and a weekly training. Some people may do a weekly staff meeting one week and a training the next week, and we kind of rotate. You guys do it as long as it's set on a regular schedule. And keep in mind that, within a period of a month to 6 weeks, your team is forgetting all the stuff you trained on 6 weeks ago. So if you trained on day one back in May, I guarantee it's not going to be the same as what the training was. So these have to be done on some sort of a regular basis. So rotate between full team gatherings and role specific sessions. You could do CAs separately from DCs for retraining, role playing, morale building. I would always bring something inspirational to every huddle. And I seriously did my homework before that. I would come in with whether it's a medical tragedy. I would come in with some sort of green book philosophy, inspiration. Maybe it's just sort of some biblical quote, whatever that was. But every single huddle, I came in to do something to inspire that team because I know they were my greatest asset. So I spent the time to do that. Again, team training. So structured onboarding and training systems. So remember that um, again, your team is your greatest sales asset. So make sure these things are put in place. So use the training timeline. So, and I wrote down here day one to day six. So if you have a special day for those patients, so obviously day one's an important day. Day two is an important day. If you're doing a doctor's report, that's an important day. If you're doing a video doctor's report, that's an important day. What systems have to be put in place for you to get the best results? And put that training schedule in place. The day of the re-exam, what happens during that re-exam? The day of the re-sign, what happens during that re-sign? Always be revising your scripts. And if you don't have written scripts done, like something typed out or an online draft of your script for each of those days, Get those in place. Make sure your team has that. You can't wing it. You have to have some sort of a script, even if it's bullet points or templates, whether it's written out in sentence form, but there has to be a script so you at least have a baseline of things to train on, okay? And stay as close to that script as possible. And of course, as your team gets really good, they're able to go off script and get back on script very well because they understand the flow. But you need to have that flow in place. And for those of you who haven't created that Office Systems online manual, I know Steve and I were talking about this recently, and he now has one online. But for those of you who don't have that, like get that done. That is so vital for you. And again, simple way to do it is say, have a team meeting. Let's try to identify all of the systems that we have in our office, day one, day two, day three, what each person does during those days, right? What is the staff responsibility for a day one? What happens on the tour? What happens when the staff hands off to the patient? What happens when the doctor comes back after the exam and hands off the patient to the staff? And just start writing it out. And as you write it out, it can be revised over time. But then at least when a new team member comes on, you have a structured team manual in place that you can hand off to those people. And here's the other thing too, and I would really recommend this, is that every time you do a training, you role play, you videotape it. And you keep a library, start a YouTube channel. It could be a private YouTube channel for your office where you have video recorded trainings of all of your so you train on day one, you videotape it, you role play it, and and then you can just share that over time, and you can always refer back to it. Hey, if you had a really good training, highlight it and say, hey, here's a classic, perfect day one demo, whatever that is. But that is a great way to, again, share with new team members or go back and look at, hey, when we were really cranking in our office, this was the training that we did. And here we are 6 months later, and our numbers have dropped by 100 visits, and our training's not the same. So it's a great thing to start doing. Okay, here's a neat team building exercise, and this is something you guys can do with your team. So this is if you remember when you were kids, you'd do the telephone game. Everybody would sit in a circle and would say, one person would start by saying a sentence, and you'd whisper it in the ear of the next person beside you, and they'd whisper it in the ear of the next person, and so on. It would go right around the circle, and then come back to the person who originally started it, and everybody would laugh because the message was totally disheveled. So this is kind of a team building exercise game. So you split staff into small groups or individuals, and what would happen is that each person creates a patient scenario. So you take turns doing it. So each team person creates a patient scenario, and they would say, okay, my name's Bob. I'm a construction worker. I've had sciatica for the last 3 months after a work accident. I've been on OxyContin, and they could get as much detail as possible. And then what they would do is they would play the telephone game. They would explain that situation to the next person beside them. And then that person would explain it to the person beside them, and so on. And then let's see, by the time it goes around to all the team members, what does Bob look like? By the time it comes around to the last person, it's like, it's Bobby, the female, that comes in with menstrual cramps and probably, because it's got totally disheveled in the communication. So it's a great way. It's kind of a fun way to really talk about how to communicate amongst and within the team. So that's a neat little exercise. You can try at one of your staff meetings or one of your team trainings, because it just creates a good energy. Whoops. And here's another thing too, is that you want to really highlight in this drill is highlight the community, the clarity, listening skills, and really start to identify areas for improvement. So what that might open up the door for is that what do we need to do in the office to improve our communication? Do we need an online communication log? Is there something within our patient management software that we can communicate to make it on a better basis? Or what we did in our office is we actually had a written team log on the cork board that patients couldn't see. It was kind of like in a little staff area, and we would write specific notes. And if it was a note about a specific patient, or if it was a note about an upcoming event, or whatever the case is, and at the bottom of the page, everybody would have to initial it to make sure that they read it, and we would read it and update it on a daily basis. So some sort of a communication log is a really worthwhile thing to implement. Okay, so how about some interactive role play? This is the next one. So this is a great one too, is we would pair team members up. One would act as the doctor, and one would act as the patient. So we actually allowed the team to pretend they were the doctor, and then another team member would be the patient. So sometimes I would be the patient, and my front desk staff person would be the doctor. And we would actually role play the situation, and we would identify specific parts of that interaction that needed to be relayed. So it would always refer to the script, not that the front desk person needed to memorize the doctor's script, but there were points in that script that absolutely needed to be relayed. So one of which, here's a perfect example, and my team got so good at explaining this part of it, was the part where we explained to the patient about what is subluxation. And through that new patient interaction, and of course it led into, after the consultation, after going through the hot buttons and everything, then asking permission from that patient, hey, would you mind if I explain a little bit about what I'm going to be looking for today? Get their affirmation. God put this amazing power inside your brain and spinal cord that runs down from your brain through your nerves out to all the different organs and systems in your body. And that whole process, that script that we used for every new patient, the team got so good at that, they could literally recite that almost word for word. And so that was one of the role-playing things that we did. But how powerful was that for the staff to be able to articulately explain that? Okay, so this is a really good role-playing exercise as well. So the other thing would be is role play presenting the care plans. So if you're a doctor and you haven't role played presenting a care plan to your team, then that's a problem, because the team needs to see you do it. They need to know what you're saying to that person. They need to know the details of the care plan and how you're presenting that to that person. And if you're not getting, 80%, 90% conversions, then that would be a great exercise to implement and start practicing on your team and get feedback from your team. How can you become a better communicator? How can you become more authoritative and more powerful in presenting that care plan? So that's another good exercise to put in. And then reverse it. Have the team present the care plan to you. Pretend you're the patient. It's, again, a great exercise. And then create a why list. And here's the big thing. To become really good at sales, it's really important to ascend to the point where you are addressing the problem of that person and helping them create a vision in their mind of the solution of that problem, more so than explaining what you're going to do. A bad salesperson sits there and talks about all of the things that we're going to do through this process. Oh, you're going to come in, you're going to get adjusted, you're going to do a warm up, you're going to get, and then we're going to do a re-exam on your 12th visit. And then between now and then, we're going to have a nutritional consultation. Oh, and then we're going to sign you up for a dinner or one of our special events to come in. But instead of that, it would be, you came in here with this lower back pain. It's affecting your life. You've been off work more times than you've been there in the last 3 months. It's affected your relationship with your wife. You can't play with your kids. Envision yourself being able to work without pain. Envision yourself being able to get back to the golf course. Envision yourself being able to play with your kids and participate in their sports, coach your kids' hockey team or baseball team, and be able to actually hit balls, shag balls to them in the outfield, get out there and skate with them. And picture yourself doing that. And that's why you need to be here 3 times a week for the next 12 weeks. So these are great things to go through when you're talking about how to present that care plan. Just the fact that you're spending time with your team to talk about exactly what you're doing, what patients need, and creating that script and giving them that authority, that's what's really important about this whole thing. Here's another team building exercise. Something you can do with your team this week or early next week. Set up time to do this. Do the patient journey mapping. And this is where you kind of sit down and you can have a big whiteboard, and you can do it in small groups or do it all together. But you literally map out a patient's journey. And on the whiteboard, you write down, like, put a little box and say, okay, this is the day 1. This is the first visit. And then put a bunch of bullet points. What has to happen on this first visit? And then day 2, and you write down everything from, the transfer to day 1 to day 2. What do they get anything to take home? Do they have a phone call? Does the doctor phone them after day 1? What happens when they come in on day 2? When they walk in the door, what has to happen? What does the transfer from the staff to the doctor look like on day 2? What does the transfer from the doctor to the staff look like at the end of day 2? What certain things need to be communicated on day 2? And then you do it for day 3, and then do it for certain adjustments. Well, what happens at the 7th adjustment? Have you double checked by that point? Have they had their kids in to get scheduled or for their examination? Has that even been brought up at this point? So there's all these things that you can do to map out that patient's journey and do it for your entire care plan. So if you have a 36 visit care plan, literally write out every single visit and then start to add things. Okay, what can happen on visit 21? What can happen on visit 9? So that you have a good understanding of all these things that can be put into the life of a patient when they're in your office. And therefore, your retention goes up, your conversions go up. It's a great exercise to do, okay? So identify the key touch points, communication gaps, opportunities to personalize that. And then groups can present their maps and improvement ideas, right? If you have a bigger group, obviously you can divide up into groups. If there's just maybe two, three, four of you, then obviously you do it all together. But brainstorm on how to increase the energy. How can we create, and this is so bottom line for today, if you take nothing else out of today, look at your office from the high level and say, does my office vibrate on a frequency that people want to be there? Or frankly, is my office a boring place to come to? So if I'm a patient, is the idea of me coming to your office exciting? Is it a place that I look forward to coming to? Not just because I want to get my adjustment, get out of pain, get out of symptoms and that type, but is my experience that I'm having, and this is the big thing, build that patient experience. Is the experience that I'm having something that really fills me up? Something that I walk out of there and I think my day is better because I've spent time coming to your office. And just start to ask yourself that question, ask your team that question, and identify things that you can do to increase the vibration, increase the energy. For those of you who are not, please join the SKOOL group. I mean, that's a huge benefit to being part of the group. It doesn't cost you guys anything. It's a free group that we put together, but I really think it's being underutilized. There are some courses in there that are incredibly beneficial. In fact, the intro course, which is open to everybody, the intro course is a 12 module course that I put together and took a lot of time to put together, but it's basically all the things that you need to put into place to the foundational stuff to build a great practice. And so, and I can see actually who's done that course, and I know most of you haven't. So I would say to you, take the time. And so to address specifically to Graham, if you go through those 12 modules, you're going to get a checklist of things to do or train on or put in place to start to build your practice into something that's just going to grow. So that would be something that if you guys haven't joined the SKOOL group, join the SKOOL group, right? And I can share a link in the chat if you haven't got the link. But and if you are in the SKOOL group, look at that, at least that 12 intro course. There's other courses just for clients, which for some reason, if you don't have access to, just text me. I can open up the access for you. You should all have access to them. Day one, day two, doctor's report, new patient tour, all that stuff is all available for you and your team there. Okay.